Disappeared.
Okay, I don't know, Rini, Vinny, if you guys want to.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. Will one of you hit record, please? Awesome. Welcome to folks who are just coming in right now, but welcome to our Zettabytes event. Why product owners are like toddlers. Very excited for this event tonight. Should be a lot of laughs throughout the evening. My name is Vinny. I am a co-founder of Zettabytes today, along with Rini Das and Lisa Cagey. Love that you're here. Love that you've joined us here tonight. So for our first guest today, we have Delaney from Equality, Ohio, I believe it is. And she's going to get an interview with Rini here. So I'm going to turn it over to the two of them to kick us off from our community partner. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Delaney. I know we have not met. I love your background. Is that in Victorian Village or German Village?
Believe it or not, this is actually my home office.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love books. I'm a huge avid reader, so you get to see a little bit of the collection.
And I love all the architectural features for the door, or is that a door or something like that at the background? It's very cool.
Yeah, we have a very large walk-in closet in the office space. It could have been a second bedroom, so it comes out in a very unique kind of a way.
Excellent. So first of all, thank you again for joining us. As most of you know, we invite a community partner to our events, and mostly to have them be introduced to the people who are attending, and also our Zeta stars, so that we can leverage, all the different things that the LGBTQ QIA community has in Central Ohio. So of course, Equality Ohio has been, a premier institution, if you will. In 1992, at least for the city of Columbus, 1992 or 94, I'm not exactly sure about the date, but the city of Columbus did pass an anti-discrimination LGBTQ law. And actually, I personally was the first test case for that law about the discrimination when I was actually summarily fired from a major employer in Columbus, and it was filed under the federal courts. It did go up to the appeals court, and there were other things that were also filed through the EEOC. We did not win because there was a way for the employer to use some logistical issues, not actually address the law to get out of it. But I've always been fascinated, with Equality Ohio. That did not exist in 1996, I think. And
it did not.
Subsequently, Elliot Fishman and a lot of the other folks who were involved with, and also the city council involved, I'm guessing, formed Equality Ohio. So tell us a little bit about, why was it formed in the first place, and also what's its mission?
Yeah, first things first, I'm sorry to hear about the instance of discrimination that you experienced. Unfortunately, that is very common for folks who are living in Ohio who are in the LGBTQ plus community. This is kind of a general disclaimer for folks. I'm going to give a 30,000 foot overview of each kind of the questions that we're talking about today. I could go on and on about each of them. They are so engaging to me. So what I've done is I'm going to be giving you the basics today, and then I'm going to point you to some great resources so that you can dive into whatever topic is of interest to you. I actually provided a link tree to Rini earlier so that we are able to get you more information in each of these questions. So first,
if I can interrupt,
yes, please, Droba. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just want to say that I will be adding the link tree, like a link to the link tree, via our different platforms. So if you're following us on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, you'll see a link to that soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So the question was about the history of Equality Ohio. Well, it was founded in 2005 to combat discrimination and problematic trends against LGBTQ plus people in Ohio. The organization as a whole identifies and transforms systems and institutions so that LGBTQ plus Ohioans can fully access lived and legal equality. We work with public officials, business leaders, faith communities, and other stakeholders to promote lived and legal equality. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's different between those two. So lived equality is your outcomes, your community well-being, your experiences as a person in the LGBTQ plus community. Legal equality is the laws that are in place to protect you in policies, in different courts, in different areas of the state. So those are kind of the two differences between lived and legal. In Ohio, we really envision a place where folks are welcome, affirmed, and flourishing. We do this through a variety of different avenues. We have a policy team that does state house and agency advocacy. We have a field team that works with municipalities to put in place those local discrimination protections, like Rini was talking about earlier. We have public education programming, coalitions, partnerships with other organizations, plenty of volunteer opportunities, and we have a legal clinic, which is where I'm tuning in from. So those are kind of the overview of the branches that we have. As an organization, our values are dignity. We believe that there's intrinsic worth and dignity of all people, trust and self-determination. We trust that the LGBTQ plus people in Ohio know what they want and what they need. And so together we seek to remove those societal barriers that are erected by bias, ignorance, fear, and oppression that limit us. Equality and racial justice is another piece of our value system. Racism is a unique, systematic, and persistent problem. Addressing it within ourselves, our communities, our policies, laws, systems, and institutions is really vital for the transformation that we seek and what we need. And we think a diverse leadership is meaningful and creates meaningful engagement from across the LGBTQ plus and allied communities, most especially in communities of color, which result in better solutions for everyone. We want to transform systems, institutions, but also people. We meet people where they are on their journey so that we are able to, our organization calls it banana breading. We sit down over a piece of banana bread and we are able to talk to folks to see where they're at in their journey toward LGBTQ equality and help them along the way.
Awesome. So let me ask this, sort of give also the perspective from, us people who are not involved with the law. In 2004, in order to elect a certain presidential candidate, let's say George Bush, there was a huge drive to the constitutional amendment to Ohio, as we knew, as marriage, banning marriage for LGBTQ plus folks, which was very interesting because there was a complete understanding with all the large employers that the day before the election, they would come to an agreement that they would offer domestic partner health benefits, all through at least with all the large employers with 100 plus people, I think. Anybody who was employing more than 100 plus people, domestic partner benefits was available in Ohio. And so when the constitutional amendment went into play, it was never really enforced, except, in the overspell and those types of interaction where people in health, exercising their health rights and things like that. I mean, that's my understanding of the history. Obviously, when 2015 happened and we got our marriage equality and everybody could marry, somehow entire state of Ohio said, we've reached equality, we are done, okay, here we are. So, if as an employee of a large or small employer, I see some kind of a discriminatory practice, especially against the trans folks, right? I mean, that's far more overt. What kind of things as an employee, let's say I'm a trans employee, as an employee, what rights do I have? Like what protection do I have from a federal, state, and local right now?
Yeah. So good question, very large question. We actually have whole 1-hour sessions to go over this because
just high level, like few things,
Yeah.
Can they fire me? Can they hire me?
Right.
That type of stuff.
So the federal government now provides some protection against discrimination through Title VII, which was recently interpreted by the Supreme Court to include both sexual orientation and gender identity discrimination in the Bostock ruling. So this is a really big Supreme Court case that happened, and employers who have 15 or more employees are covered under this, as well as the federal government, employment agencies, and labor organizations. I put some information in that link tree that's going to be coming to you, but that's kind of the overview of what protects you federally. Federal contractors and subcontractors are covered by separate explicit prohibitions on transgender and sexual orientation discriminations on an executive order, not existing law outside of the executive order. So that's kind of federal. Statewide, unfortunately, there are no statewide protections in Ohio that help to prohibit discrimination in employment or housing or public accommodations. Even though Ohio thinks it's done with equality, we are not done with it. So we keep pushing for it. One example for that is the Ohio Fairness Act, which hasn't been passed yet, but it's currently in the House and the Senate and has the most bipartisan support that it has ever received. The Ohio Civil Rights Commission is actually acknowledging Bostock's impact on employment rights and will receive and investigate charges based on such discrimination, even though there's no particular law in Ohio that covers it throughout the state. Because there is no statewide protections, we look to local. This is a little bit what we described earlier, but many cities and towns have established their own protections. Equality Ohio actually has a map that tracks the jurisdictions that have protected folks who are in the LGBTQ plus community. We've got 34 so far, and we are working to get more of those. So there's a link in that tree that I mentioned that has a map of each of the areas that are protected. If you want to know more about any of this and any of Equality Ohio, we have a contact us page, and those are all linked in there as well, letting us know what you would be interested in, whether it's joining our advocacy team to keep up the push for non-discrimination protections, or jumping in with the efforts that we're doing with our policy team to really change hearts and minds.
Awesome. Just a quick check. Does anybody have any question before I go to the next one, based on what you guys have heard so far?
What was that employee threshold that we're protected federally now?
15.
15, 1-5. Okay, cool.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have like a package of information for college, the college communities? I'm teaching at Terra State Community College, and they have a very small, like a pride group, they call themselves. It's very small, but what I notice is in the demographics of my classroom, I'm getting a lot more LGBTQ students in. Then they're talking and they realize I'm an ally, I'm an advocate. And so I was kind of wondering if there's something that specifically targets the college groups, the college advocacy groups.
Yeah, really great question. It really will depend, it's the lawyer answer. It'll depend on what topic they're interested in, because we put out a lot of information as an org and about different organizations that are affirming. We actually have a link tree, which is what I base this off of, that has all of our public resources available for folks to click on, dive into, and take a look at. So there's a specific link in there, as well as the thing that's popping to mind for me is name and gender marker changes is a huge thing that we have seen for folks on a college basis. The younger generation really has been pushing for updating who they are with their documentation. So those, we actually have clinics every single month. So if they want to get involved, we actually do free legal advice every month with Trans Ohio, Octopus, Equitas, Living with Change. So these organizations get a bunch of lawyers together, and we set aside half an hour to walk somebody through the process to legally change your name and gender marker in Ohio. So those are kind of the two big ones.
I mean, since you mentioned the gender marker legal clinic, I think I heard this from Shaban also, that there is a fund that, if you can choose, like a lot of the people cannot afford, paying all the fees, like I think it's like 120 or something like that, depending on which district, county you're applying to and all of that. So you can contribute actually to that fund, right? I mean, you have that
Yeah.
established right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Or any of the name change.
Trans Ohio is the organization that has a scholarship fund. You can always donate to Trans Ohio if you want to increase that fund for folks who aren't able to afford those fees. In addition, the Equality Ohio Legal Clinic is a completely free legal clinic. So we are able to help folks who are in the LGBTQ community that are 300% of the poverty rate and a member of the community. So if they have a legal need and they're not able to afford it, that is another free thing that we are able to do.
Awesome. Actually, this Tamara, your question segues into the question we had already, pre-planned, which is employers, have a lot of these employee resource groups, and also obviously universities and student groups and things like that. What would be the best way to sort of bring in Equality Ohio within those employee resource groups? Almost everybody out here works with pretty large employers and belong to those groups. So
yeah, absolutely. Two things are coming to mind for me. Thing number one is Equality Ohio has a social enterprise called Chroma that leverages our experience and expertise to provide some LGBTQ plus D&I training for businesses, nonprofits, government entities. You can contact Siobhan Boyd Nelson, our deputy director, for more information. Her email is going to be in that link tree that I mentioned. Also, there's a link there for Chroma Consulting so that you can get some more information, see what's going on there, and help the organization be a more open, affirming, positive organization. In addition, the thing that I would recommend when it comes to non-business, you mentioned a different demographic of folks who would want to get interested and engaged. Could you repeat that?
oh, I was mentioning, like non-business, but these academic, student groups and I mean, what Tamara was mentioning.
Yeah. So social media has been on the rise, as we have definitely seen over time. We have a number of different social media platforms where we share stories and testimony from folks who have reached out to us and want to really share their story. That's also very, very helpful in combating these bad bills that are in our state house right now. There is a continuous need to get stories from folks who have lived experiences. For example, we have the Ohio Can Play website that is going up right now. It's going up tomorrow, so we're very, very excited about that one. That is dealing with the current legislation that is in the state house, unfortunately. It's called the Anti-Trans Youth Sports Bill. So that is one way for organizations to get involved, student groups to get involved. We also have those volunteer nights. And as part of that, you kind of come into Equality Ohio, you get to learn a little bit more about who we are, and then you get to make some calls and make an impact to really kind of promote the good bills and get the bad bills kicked out. I can tell you a little bit more about those if you want, kind of which ones are top of mind at the moment. But those are the things that I would definitely recommend.
I would suggest, but if you can, like on the chat, like, just put in some of the bills. And also, as these bills come in, please reach out to us because, we have about 500 people in our mailing list, most of them in Central Ohio. And we can definitely, send out a thing saying, if you want to participate and show up to the State House. For others, I do work with, some of my friends at the State House, and these bills are just like you think we are in 14th century, let's put it that way, okay? That's,
Truly.
I mean, a lot of these bills, the language and everything, just horrific. So, and they're getting passed in Texas and Florida, as we have seen, and also in all various, so-called red states, Idaho and God knows what. But in Ohio, this is also happening. Awesome. I see that, there is somebody just posted on the chat thread some of that information. So that would be just awesome. If we can participate and help you guys, just let us know. And then our folks can even take it to the employer groups and make them aware of these legislations, because one thing that really changed in the entire country is all of a sudden everybody realized that the LGBTQ plus are great consumers. And therefore the businesses were dying to, essentially make sure that we keep our employees. And so we need to get to the large employers and tell them what is going on in the State House so that they can put the pressure on it,
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Another great way to actually leverage your power as businesses is we have something called the Ohio Business Competes. This is a collective of different businesses across the state that think that one, discrimination is bad for business, and two, they want a more affirming, really open business, because we've seen actually businesses choosing not to come to Ohio because of the legislation that's going on and what we have going. So the Ohio Business Competes is a great way to sign up and put your voice out there as an organization to say, hey, we support this. Please pay attention to the different legislators.
to that note, Rachel, something you had asked, I think the last time we were talking as to what we are going to do about Intel. I know that Equality Ohio and several people from the LGBTQ Roundtable already are having conversations with the Intel management. Like, it was signed with the state of Ohio, whose governor has come out against the LGBTQI, plus our own governor and lieutenant governor has come out against it. So how do they reconcile with, all of that? So anybody who wants to participate, I would really welcome, reaching out to Delaney. I do have one more question before I open it up again to everybody.
Yeah.
So over the decades, you guys have won a lot of you've had your victories, right? So what are you most, as Equality Ohio or you, most proud of, and, that you want us to congratulate and think about you every time we actually experience some benefit out of that?
Thank you. I like the opportunity to kind of celebrate my colleagues and also work on celebrating myself as well. Our organization really has sped up this process of passing those non-discrimination local ordinances like we talked about. We started off with 5 or 6, and we are now to 34. That is a huge win for folks when there's no overarching legislation in Ohio that really protects people. We also have administrative wins where we are kind of pushing the envelope behind the scenes. So how you're able to update your gender marker on your driver's license, we were definitely a part of that as well. And we are currently working on making sure that the different counties in Ohio are able to continue allowing folks to process and update their gender markers on their birth certificates. That's a huge one that we're watching right now. We have a lot of litigation victories that are very behind the scenes for impact litigation that we don't always get the chance to talk about. It's a little bit more like West Wing. So for those who are a fan of West Wing, it is the behind the scenes work that we're doing, having thousands of conversations per year about LGBTQ plus equality in that very banana bread way that I was talking about. We have conversations with people who are considering themselves to be our opposition. And we occupy that unique space where we can have a conversation with people, and where they're at, we're able to meet them and help folks move forward on that journey toward LGBTQ plus allyship. It's folks being on that journey that prevents bad legislation from being introduced, and it helps combat ones that already exist. For example, there's a medical conscience clause that passed in Ohio through the budget. This is one that we were keeping our eyes on, and it got snuck into the budget of Ohio's, well, for the entire state house. They had to pass a budget to
The appropriation bill.
Yes.
Yep.
So this is an amendment, the Conscience Clause Amendment, that passed the state budget, and the provision allows healthcare providers, medical school students and staff, and employees of a healthcare provider. This is broad ranging, so that could be nurses, doctors, counselors, assistants, receptionists, janitors, to refuse to provide any service that's in conflict with their moral, ethical, or religious beliefs unless it's emergency medical treatment. So what that means is a receptionist can refuse to check in a patient who's receiving gender affirming care. A nurse can refuse to administer prescribed higher levels of pain meds because it would hasten the end of life for a terminal patient. Pharmacies could refuse to fulfill prescriptions for birth control, PrEP, and antiretrovirals, and that really has a big impact on folks who are living with HIV. So this is a huge impact to transgender and non-binary folks, other members of the LGBTQ plus community, businesses, even from regulating their workforce due to the civil cause of action provisions that allow anyone, an employee, a service provider, etc., to invoke this provision to sue a hospital or a healthcare provider. So it's things like that that we try to prevent. And definitely key takeaways. Our community activation has been swift. We've had a lot of people activate and protest and share their voices and their stories. We have been vigilant, and we need to keep watching, and we need to keep rallying to make sure that we know what's going on and how to get active to stop it.
That is phenomenal. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. I have the hard task of keeping us up on our agenda. So, but thank you.